If you're living abroad, you might find yourself in a situation where you have two cell phone eSIMs or physical SIM cards that you have to manage. Sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming to manage all of these because there's a lot of settings. So let me quickly go through these and I'll just walk you through what you're seeing and what these settings are. So here we see the cellular data screen. I got to here from going into the settings app. Right here, I'll click on cellular. And then here you can see the different settings. I'm going to swipe down from the top right into the control center. Here you can see the two different SIM cards. You see B for Byte, V for Telcel. Um, Byte is the network I'm on, Telcel is the network I'm on. The B and the V come from the names that I've given these. So right here where it says cellular data, right here you see Byte and you see visible. I've named those that. You can rename those. I'll show you in a minute how to do that. But basically, it shows you the B and the V to let you know kind of which one is which. But then the network you're on could vary depending on if you're roaming or if you're in a different country. It could say something different there, which is why they have that B and the V to let you know which network is, which SIM card is roaming on which network. So back to these settings, cellular data. This is where you're telling your phone which cellular data plan to use. In this case, I have Byte selected. I also have visible available. And if I swipe down in the control center, you'll see right here, Byte is first, Telcel is second. So right now I am using Byte data. If I would like to use Visible's data, I can just tap that and you'll see up here the order switched. So now Telcel's on the top, Byte is secondary. So where it says Telcel LTE, that means I'm connected to Telcel's data network. You'll notice Byte now doesn't say LTE because it's just connected to the network, like for phone and text, but it's not using the data from Byte. If I would like to allow cellular data switching, this basically will use the most powerful network. So if I have both these with cellular data on them, which I have right now, I can turn on cellular data switching, and then it will try Telcel, and if Telcel is not strong enough, it'll just automatically switch to Byte and back and forth. So if you don't want it to switch because you have a limited plan on one of them or whatever, you can just leave that off. Or if you want to be able to manually change it. So in this situation, it doesn't really matter which one I'm on, but it will show right here the order of the that you have selected. So if I have Telcel selected, it's using Telcel. If I want to go back to Byte, you'll notice it's now swapped to the Byte line. And right here in the top right hand corner, you can see the two signal indicators. The top one, there's 3 out of 4 bars. That's Byte. The bottom one where it has the 4 dots, that's showing me the signal strength of Telcel. So when you have it minimized like this, you can see up in that top right corner, the first one you have selected, in this case it's Byte, is 3 out of 4. And the second one that's available to you, but not selected, is visible. So you can also see the signal strength of that one right there underneath with the 4 little dots. But it's important to remember that only one of them is connected to the data line at any given point, and that's the first one you have selected. So let's go back out of that. The next line here is personal hotspot. This is if you want to share your data connection with another device, for example, your laptop or your kid's tablet or whatever. You can click right there, turn that on if you would like. Next, we have default voice line. This is the line that your calls will start from. So if I go to the dialer and I call my friend, right now they will see my phone number as Byte because I'm calling from the Byte phone. If I swap that to visible and I make the call from visible, then they will see that Byte phone number. Obviously, when you call, you can pick which one you call from, but this is going to be the default where you start conversations from. Now we're getting down to the SIMs area. This is where it gets kind of complicated. So right here, I have both of my SIMs. You see Byte and visible. Right there on the right-hand side, you see they are both on. I click on Byte. Earlier in the video, I mentioned you can change the name of these if you want. That's just right here at the very top. You can kind of pick what you want to call it. You can either use one of their pre-populated ones or you can label it yourself. And then that very second switch, you can turn that line off or on. So if I turn that off, you'll notice now the Byte will go away and Telcel will become the primary because it's the only one on right now. This is as if Byte doesn't exist. It will never switch to it. It's done. So if I want to turn that back on, it'll take it a minute. You can see it's finding the service. And then once it connects, It'll take a minute to find the data service. So here are the network options for Byte. I can go to network selection. If I turn this off, it will let me pick some providers if they're available, but you kind of always want that on automatic because then it will just pick the strongest one. I don't know that I really want to wait for that, so I'm going to go back out of that. Oh, it's back on automatic. So back out of that, my number. Here you can see your phone number. If you change that, it won't change anything. That's just for your reference for what your phone number is. Wi-Fi calling. This is if you want to use, some carriers offer Wi-Fi calling where if the cellular signal is low, it can route the call through Wi-Fi. I typically leave this off on my phones because um, sometimes if I want to call and I leave the house, it'll be on my Wi-Fi network, then it will switch to the data network and it will drop the call. So I just leave that off all the time because here in my house and where I spend most of my time, I have great cell phone service. So I always leave that off because I don't like it. But if you're in a crappy apartment and you don't have good service, you might want to use that. Calls on other devices. This is a Apple feature. Basically, if I am nearby my MacBook and I get a call on my phone, then it will tell me, hey, it will actually ring on my the screen of my Mac, and I can answer the call sort of through my Mac. I don't like that because I want to just answer calls on my phone. And the other reason is sometimes I leave my laptop like in my office, and I might have a kid in here sleeping or something. I don't know, so I just don't like that. I only want my phone to ring on my phone. I don't want it to ring my iPad or my Mac or my watch. I want it to just ring on the phone. So I leave that off. Voice and data. Here you can see sort of different speeds of data that your phone is capable of. That doesn't necessarily mean your network is capable of this. So in this case, you can pick 5G auto, and it will leave the 5G modem, like the hardware inside your phone, enabled. And if there's a 5G network available, it will switch to that one if you're doing like a data intensive task. The downside of that is the 5G modem uses a fair amount of battery power. So if you're trying to save battery or if there isn't even 5G in your area, which is my case, I turn that off by just selecting LTE. If you have great service where you live with 5G and you don't care about your battery because you're plugged in all day, hit 5G on, you'll always get the fastest speeds. The next option here is cellular data network. You go ahead and tap on that. Sometimes when you sign up for these carriers like Byte, for example, or if you're roaming somewhere or you use an eSIM, they will text you and say, hey, here are they call them APN settings. And you can see it right there. That first option is APN. And that's what happens with Byte. You'll connect to it and it will connect sort of weekly, but it will connect. And then you'll get a text that says, hey, go modify your APN settings. So this is what those are. You come in here and you basically tell your phone, hey, to connect to cellular data, go to this website sort of behind the scenes. And the same with the personal hotspot, you go to this site. I could select use carrier settings, which is what happens initially, but after I signed up for Byte, it texted me and said, hey, go change them to this because they don't have the settings for every single phone. So sometimes you have to manually put them in. But in general, you shouldn't have to go in here after like the first time you go in here. Data roaming. This is your option to enable. This allows your phone to roam outside of its home network. For example, if you're on Verizon and you're here in Mexico, it's not going to connect to the local roaming partner, which is Telcel, because you have data roaming off. This is what I see in a lot of the forums and travel groups that I'm in. People say, my phone's not connecting. You got to go turn data roaming on. You should note, though, that if you do that and your plan doesn't include roaming, you might incur some roaming charges. But if you're certain that your plan includes unlimited roaming, for example, here in Mexico, Verizon includes 2 gigabytes per day, you want to go ahead and turn that on so it will connect to the local networks. In my case, I leave that on because my Byte plan includes roaming. So SIM pin, I never mess with this. You can put a pin on your SIM if someone's going to steal your SIM card and put it in their phone. You can put a pin on yours to prevent that from happening. In my case, I use eSIM, so no one's popping that out of my device. I'm not too worried about it. SIM applications, some companies provide applications in here for like checking your data usage and things like that. I've never gone in here. Most people have other ways of checking that, so it's kind of useless at this point. Low data mode. Low data mode toggle is for reducing your cellular usage. Basically, your phone does a lot of things in the background. Like it might be syncing your photos to the cloud, it might be checking your location, it might be updating traffic. So if you want that on, it will sort of restrict your data to just what you're doing or like, important tasks. And it won't be backing things up in the background and using up your data. Generally, when I'm here, I leave that on because I don't get as generous of a data plan as I had in the US. I think I get 20 gigabytes at high speed and then it slows down. I generally don't use more than a couple of gigs. I'm not too worried about it, but I probably will leave that enabled so that it doesn't do background things for the battery life more than for the data settings. The last option there is limit IP address tracking. You limit your IP address tracking. This is when you're in Safari and Mail and some iOS, Apple apps. You can limit your IP address and it will spoof your IP address. I leave it on because why not? But ultimately, it doesn't really affect much outside of Apple's built-in apps. So that was in the Byte sim. Now let's go down to Visible just to check the options in here. So here you're going to find that my plan here is visible because this is an American plan and I'm currently roaming in Mexico. The Byte plan is a Mexican carrier in Mexico. So this one's a little different because I'm technically on Visible, but it's roaming on Telcel because that's who the roaming partner for Verizon is here in Mexico. In fact, I think they're the roaming partner for every Mexican carrier, or every American carrier in Mexico. But I don't know. The rest of the options here are basically the same. Wi-Fi calling off. I don't want to be making calls through my Wi-Fi because I don't want to drop signal if I leave Wi-Fi. Calls on other devices is off. I don't want to get calls on my Mac. I want calls to go through my phone. Voice and data, I have 5G auto on because I know that Telcel has some 5G here in Playa. And I'm not so worried about battery life because usually I'm plugged into my car when I'm driving around. Data mode, because 5G is so fast, Apple lets you do other things on 5G. Like you can do background tasks like upload your photos, you can have higher quality video calls, things like that. If I were really concerned about that, I would go to low data mode just so that doesn't happen. But that's kind of up to you. Down here we say data roaming again, limit IP address, carrier services. Again, Visible has some services they offer. Those vary depending on your carrier. And if I wanted to put a pin on the SIM, I could do that there, but I'm not worried about it because this is an eSIM. Finally, at the bottom here, if I would like to delete this eSIM, because I'm done having service from Visible, and I think iPhone only lets you have like 8 at a time, 8 eSIMs in here. Even if they're not active, they're still kind of stored in there. I think it's 8. I could just double check real quick while I'm here. Yeah, you can store up to 8. So you can have up to 8 eSIMs at any given time. So even if they're inactive, they still count as part of the 8. So you'd want to go in here and click delete right there at the bottom if you were done with this one. Back on this page, the last one we have is add eSIM. If I wanted to add a new eSIM carrier, I would go ahead and tap that. It will pop up and say, hey, scan the QR code or enter the details manually. In this case, I don't really want to do this because I don't have one to set up right now, but that's where you would do that at. Then down here, it shows your data usage for Visible, because that is the one that I have selected right here for cellular data. So we can see here's how much I've used. I've been doing speed tests here for speed comparison, so I'm using a lot of data for that. But if I switch the cellular data tab right here, back to Byte, and then go back, now it shows my data usage for Byte. So again, I've been doing a lot of speed tests for a video I'm making. So let's just go back down through these options. Here I can see which apps are allowed to access my data. I have pretty much all of them enabled because I want to use data when I want it. But if you had an app that was using a lot of background data or something, or your kid might open it, you might disable those here. Wi-Fi assist. This is for if you're on Wi-Fi but it's not connecting and your phone's like thinking and you get the little swirly thing. You can turn on Wi-Fi assist and it will basically fall back to your data connection and load things over your data instead of over Wi-Fi if the Wi-Fi is slow. Otherwise, when you're connected to Wi-Fi, it's going to always try the Wi-Fi, even if it's slow. In my case, like I mentioned, this Byte plan only has 20 gigabytes on it, so I don't want Wi-Fi assist on. If I'm on my Wi-Fi, I want my Wi-Fi to work. I don't want to be sort of accidentally using data, if that makes sense. iCloud Drive, this is to back up things in your iCloud Drive, contacts, pictures, whatever you got, transfer your documents. I leave that off again because I'm on Wi-Fi all night and it can back up over that, and I don't want to use up cellular data during those backups. The last one there, iCloud backup. This one is the same thing. I back up every night when I'm on Wi-Fi. I don't need it backing up during the day over my cellular data. One, for the battery life, and then two, to not consume all my data. Call time, this is how much time you've used in the dialer app. So this is like if you're just making a call over the phone line, you're not using a data line. Like you're not using WhatsApp, you're not using Google Voice. This is strictly through the dialer. Here in Mexico, that 3 minutes essentially accounts to me calling and ordering pizza. Because the pizza place is pretty much the only place I ever call that doesn't have WhatsApp. So that's my pizza order right there. Right here at the bottom, enable cellular usage statistics. You can turn that off if you'd like. One of the reasons I can think why someone might do that is if they have a creepy spouse who goes through their data usage and might see that they're making a lot of calls to Snapchat or something sneaky. I don't know. I've never turned that off, but I think that would be why, if you wanted to kind of cover your tracks, or if it was like a company phone, maybe you don't want to see where this, you don't want your company to see where you spend your time or something. And then right there, you can reset usage statistics. I reset that every single data period on my phone, like every month essentially, because I like to see how much data I'm using kind of in real time. Because I have a limit of 20. It says it's unlimited, but when I get to 20 gig, it slows me down. So I like to know where I'm at. Again, if I go up here to cellular data, swap back to visible, and then go back, this is now all the same settings for visible. I should go ahead and turn off Wi-Fi assist. And then you can see the other usage stats there. If I have an American SIM and I don't want to roam in the country I'm moving to, that's super easy. Let's pretend like visible is my American one. I go right here, turn this line off. Great. Now it is as if that does not exist. So if I were traveling and I did not want that line to ever be used, this right here is where I turn that off. So now you go down from the top, you can see that line does not exist. I will not connect to it. The phone can't connect. The phone cannot override. That is it on that guy. And it would be the same thing the opposite way if I wanted to, turn off Byte. So when I go back to the US, for example, Byte is my Mexican phone line. So I would turn that off because I don't want to be data roaming in the background on that line and get, use up whatever international data usage I have on Byte. I would just turn that off. Also to not confuse my phone. Like, hey, don't ring on that line. Don't pull data from that line. Like that line doesn't exist while I'm in America. And when I'm in Mexico, visible doesn't exist. I have it on right now for this video, but I generally don't use it. And then default is always Byte because that's the one that I use here the most. So those are your cellular data settings. I hope that's helpful for you to understand kind of how to use these and how to manage these. I might make some more videos about this in the future, but that should give you a quick high-level overview of how these work.